Welcome. Thank you for taking our time out of your busy schedules to listen to some analytics stuff. We're going to kick on with the fun stuff quickly, but I'll get Gary to just give a bit of an intro first, and then we'll jump into the actual good bits. Over to you, Gary.
Hi, Preet, if you could upload the presentation, that would be great.
Yes.
As Preet said, thanks everyone for attending. You're certainly some of the first people to be educating yourself on Google Analytics 4, which was only launched in October of last year. And hopefully you'll be among the first people actually implementing it. As you all know, it always makes sense to be an early adopter, and hopefully you guys will be the same. Preet, if you can quickly show everyone the agenda slide, that'd be great. Next slide. So if, I'll give you a second to actually read the agenda. So we're going to start with a quick poll. We're just keen to understand, is basically Google doing a good job of educating people on Google Analytics 4? It's anonymous, it will take 2 minutes. And then Preet's going to talk you through what is, why is, when should you implement it, and a bit of a tour of the interface. Just to quickly introduce Preet. Preet's a founding member of Indago Digital, is also one of the first employees. He's also one of the first people in the country to implement GA4 only a month after it was released, and he's continued to build his knowledge by implementing other accounts. So Preet, if we can roll on to the poll itself, that would be great. And as I said, guys, it's anonymous. It'll only take 2 minutes. And I think really importantly, as we go along, please use the Q&A section to answer any questions, and we'll try and get to them. And if we don't have the answer, we can respond to you after the event. Please note the session is also on demand as well, so you can have access to that via the link at later points in time. But Preet, if you can do the poll quickly, that'd be great.
Yep. Cool. I think we'll kick off. Thank you very much, everyone. I'm just going to quickly share my screen again. So we've gone through the poll. All right, let's talk about GA4. First up, what is GA4? Well, it's the latest version of Google Analytics that was launched in October last year. For those who keep abreast with the analytics news, it's interesting how Google Analytics have evolved over time. Back in the day, I think it was 2005 when Google actually bought out an analytics provider called Urchin Analytics. a few years later, I think it was 3 years later, they renamed it to Classic Analytics, which was essentially GA2. And then I think about 2011, 2012, they launched or rebranded to Universal Analytics, the version that we're all used to using these days. And now we're up to GA4, which is the new shiny analytics platform that Google has launched. It's built to measure the modern day kind of user behavior and marketing practices and techniques and platforms that we are used to now. Over the years, obviously, the user behavior has changed significantly. It's no longer limited to a single device, single platform. People jump across different devices, different websites, different apps, different marketing channels they interact with. And this version of Google Analytics is Google's kind of latest attempt to track and measure all of these things in a single place. So people like you and I and everyone else within various businesses can look at the data in a concise, consolidated manner. Privacy is a big thing these days, and it's only going to get bigger and bigger. The whole data privacy conversation, cookies being slowly kind of phased out, all of that has been taken into account whilst building GA4 by Google. It focuses a lot on privacy and data protection. There's a lot of settings that Google has actually added to the platform itself that helps you control how you want to distribute and collect data. Also, it has enhanced predictive abilities, according to Google, which is meant to fill in the gaps that are left by the deprecation of cookies. Essentially, there would be gaps in your conversion data, for example. Apple, for example, is purging cookies after 24 hours these days on the latest version of Safari. Google will follow probably suit at some point in time. This will mean gap in conversion tracking, and GA4 is supposedly going to tackle it by using the Google AI and machine learning algorithms that it has built over time. Cool. Moving on. GA4 versus Universal GA. What's new? I reckon the biggest kind of point of difference is how GA4 collects data, and it has a completely different measurement model in place for data collection. If you're a heavy user of Universal Analytics, you probably understand that the measurement in Universal Analytics works off a hit-based model, so everything is essentially a hit, whether it's a page view, a click or a download or whatever have you. But GA4 relies on something called an event-based model. Literally every interaction that happens on your website is treated as an event in GA4, whether it be a page view, whether someone clicking, scrolling, really just everything is an event, which does simplify quite a few things. A new measurement model does mean that comes with new additional metrics and dimensions. We've got a quick tour of the actual platform at the end of these couple of slides. So I'll take you through some of the new dimensions and metrics at that point in time. Speaking about the interface, it does have a new interface as well. Google's kind of kept some of the Universal Analytics features and format in place, but there's definitely quite a few things that are new in GA4's interface as well. As I mentioned earlier, it's basically built to measure and then analyze, look at your data in a single place. You don't have to jump between different accounts. For example, if you were running activity on websites and iOS and Android as well, GA4 has the capability for all of the data to be analyzed in the same place. There will be a lot more focus on insights. Again, I'll show you guys how this would probably work using Google's machine learning and AI capabilities. These features are still a bit available in the Universal Analytics version as well, but according to Google, the GA4 platform is basically custom built to provide insights that are actually usable. So asking questions around your data would become a lot easier, and then finding answers to them. It also has a debug mode in GA4 for those of you who are familiar with Google Tag Manager and have used the preview mode. It's something similar to that. You can actually debug all your events. For example, if you created an event, it wasn't really working properly, you can actually debug that particular event within the platform itself. So you don't have to really switch between platforms, which is pretty cool. And I think another big change or feature is linking to BigQuery is available in GA4, something that was exclusive to GA360 previously. BigQuery obviously is the data warehouse and much more a product by Google. You know, it can become a very powerful kind of hub if you connect GA4 to BigQuery. For example, if you were to upload your CRM data via BigQuery into GA4, you can have a single place where all of your data sits from you know, someone actually interacting with your ad, for example, to actually acquiring the customer, and then beyond that as well. Go quickly on why we should actually bother about GA4. As I said, over time, there's been different versions of Google Analytics. This is the 4th version. So the current, or the version that's running in parallel, Universal Analytics, will be deprecated at some point of time. I do remember when Google was transitioning between Classic and Universal, there was a significant amount of time that both systems ran in parallel. I think it was probably 18 months to 2 years. But still, the quicker you set it all up, the better it is, because GA4 will become the standard kind of analytics version relatively soon. You want to set up really GA from day one, GA4 from really day one, because you want as much historical data as possible within your GA4 property. Google hasn't really said anything about whether GA4 will be able to backdate the data, but considering how it's built and how it's using a completely different measurement model with different depth metrics and dimensions, it's possibly unlikely that you'd be able to kind of just import data from Universal Analytics and then you'll have, you know, several years worth of data already in GA4. That doesn't look likely. So really, you should be all looking to implement it as soon as possible to get as much historical data as possible. Because the system is new, it's a new interface, new metrics and dimensions. There will be you know, changes that you'll have to make to your systems if you're reporting off GA universal data. Maybe you should start thinking about how reports from GA4 would work like. There would be a learning curve for the teams and for everyone who's a regular user of analytics within your organizations to learn really how the platform works, where different reports are, etc. And the sooner you kind of get used to the system and everything else, the sooner you'll get over that learning curve. Google's mandate at the moment is that GA4 isn't really a finished product per se. You shouldn't really rely on GA4 for all of your reporting. Their recommendation is to run both GA4 and Universal Analytics parallel. Still rely on Universal Analytics for your reporting as you are doing right now, but then switch over to GA4 when everything is ready and Google has updated and enhanced all the reports within GA4. When we look at the interface in a minute or so, you'll find that there's not a lot that is available in GA4 at the moment. It's a very basic kind of platform. especially when you compare it against Universal Analytics. There's quite a lot that's still missing. So obviously Google's still working on adding all the reports, etc., to this version of analytics. Cool. Gonna quickly jump into the interface now. Hopefully all of you can still see my screen. All right, cool. So this is what GA4 looks like. Same but different, I'd say. There's the usual kind of left-hand navigation bar. Some of the sections are same as Universal, but there's a few that are different. For example, acquisition is something that you'd find in the Universal Analytics platform as well. So if you look at, for example, traffic acquisition under the new GA4 acquisition section, you'd find that it's very similar to the source medium report we're all used to looking at in Universal. There's a few, as I said, a few different metrics and dimensions are available because there's different sort of measurement model. So for example, engaged session is something that's new that people probably wouldn't have come across in Universal Analytics. Similarly, there are a few other metrics that are a bit different. Engagement section is probably equivalent to the behavior section that we are used to seeing in Universal. So if we go to the pages and screens section or report, you can see the report that you probably would be used to seeing in Universal. There's an interesting sort of setup here. For example, if you look at the event count, which is again a new metric available in GA4, because the whole environment is based on this measurement model, everything is really just an event. So you can select individual events underneath here. So if you want to look at how many clicks have happened on your site, scrolls, user engagements, first visits, page views, etc. So it will take a little bit of time to kind of get used to where everything is and how to kind of get to the reports that are used, that everyone is sort of used to getting to using the Universal version. So, but I'm sure once everyone kind of goes through everything, should be fine. If you look at demographics and the tech sections, I'll quickly go through this tech overview section, which is the equivalent of looking at device level report. Device and platform level report, sorry, in Universal. This is what it looks like. And as you can see, these sections are very limited. There's only about 2 or 3 kind of subcategories under these sections compared to the Universal version where really there's a lot more available. So I think that's why Google is really saying don't rely on GA4 at the moment for all your reporting. Set it up and just let it collect data and then understand the platform, how it works, etc. There's a couple of changes that I wanted to show, which are under the admin section. What you'd find is there's no views in GA4. All the data actually sits at the property level as opposed to Universal Analytics, where really at the property level you could change the settings, etc. But nothing really else. Everything happens at the view level. The other interesting change here is this availability of data stream section. So if we click onto this, you'd find that you need to create, because it's built to track really all the different traffic sources. You'll probably have to build a traffic source per data stream. For example, this is Indago Digital's website, so we don't really have an app anywhere on any of the platforms, so we have just the one data source or data stream. But obviously, if you have multiple sources of traffic, you'll build multiple data streams. Google Ads linking, again, if you have Google Ads account, definitely link it to really straight away, because that'll obviously enhance your data as well. And the BigQuery linking as well. So if you have any, if you are an existing user of BigQuery and you are using it with your GA properties, it's highly recommended that you do the same under GA4 as well. I think that was about it for now. As I said, this was supposed to be just a quick kind of overview, just to let you guys know what actually it is and what the interface actually looks like. Happy to take any questions if there are. I'm just gonna stop sharing my screen and quickly jump into. Someone had a question. Do we have to set up events like goal conversions, or is this an automatically? It's a bit of a mix and match. Some of the events are automatically tracked. So for example, if you were trying to set up an equivalent URL based goal, that would be automatically tracked, but you'll have to do a little bit of tweaking to set it up as a conversion, if that makes sense. So that particular destination goal that you are currently using in Universal as a goal would be tracked, but to set it up as a conversion, it'll require a little bit of a tweak. Another question is, what kind of data can be imported via the data streams hookup, and which channels can I plug in? So the data streams are limited to website and apps really. So under apps, iOS and Android. For each particular data stream, you'll have to set up a tag. So for example, if you were setting up a website, GA4 for a particular website, you'll have to use, you can use either Google Tag Manager, or you can implement a standalone GA4 tag as well, just like you can for Universal Analytics. And similarly for the apps as well. So data streams are really just limited to websites and apps at the moment. Another question, would GA4 allow better visibility over not found keywords, example, better integration with Google Search Console? I'm not sure yet. Doesn't look likely. I'd say, if I had to guess, I'd say no. Is there any information around predictive capabilities mentioned early on? Not yet. They haven't really provided anything concrete how it all will actually work in the interface. But as soon as there's information out there, we'll share with everyone. Another question, the current interface has some AI insights features. Is this improved upon in the new version? Yes, that is the goal of GA4, as per what Google has said. It's around getting the questions answered as accurately as possible. There might be capabilities where you can just type in your question and Google Analytics will be able to answer the question. So I think that's kind of the end stage that Google is looking to get to with GA4. In terms of setup, is the process as simply as adding a UA tag via Tag Manager? Yes, it is relatively simple. You won't be adding any UA related tags because that's the older tag. There is a GA4 setup assistant that is available in existing GA properties. You can really go through that entire setup and set it up. There might be some complications based on how the previous implementation is done, i.e. if it's done through Google Tag Manager or if it's a standalone implementation. It does vary. The process of implementing GA4 does vary based on that. But yes, it is. It can be added via Tag Manager. It has a GA4 configuration tag template already enabled in Google Tag Manager, so you can use it to set up GA4.
Preet, there's a couple more questions in the chat box. There's one. I'll read out the first one to you.
Oh, yeah.
Any tips and learnings from the implementations you have done to date?
Tips, I think one tip I'd probably recommend is if you're trying to set it up yourself, the GA4 setup assistant is great, but your previous implementation needs to be done exactly the Google way for it to work properly. So I'd probably set it up myself and then connect it back to your universal property. The other learning would be I think it's just important to read and understand what all the new kind of metrics and dimensions mean. And the event section looks relatively simple, but setting up conversion tracking, even as simple as setting up a destination-based event, which is a goal in Universal Analytics, can be a bit tricky. So really just go through the documentation that Google has provided. There's a lot of obviously resources available online as well, so it can get a bit tricky. So before you do any of that, just make sure you know exactly what you're doing.
And sorry to kind of button here, but obviously we're more than happy to help anyone with an implementation. In fact, we're pushing for all of our clients to do at least a basic implementation of Google Analytics immediately. There's a couple more questions, Preet. One is, when is GA4 available for us? And I'd assume that means kind of, any advertiser.
It is available right now, so you can set it up tomorrow if you want, or today if you want. It is out of beta. It was in beta up until October last year, and then they released it to everyone.
One more question I can see, Preet, and then I'll leave you be. Are there any new features on GA4 now that you would recommend using, even though it's not yet 100% reliable?
If you have all your, I think it becomes a lot more interesting if you have multiple data streams, because that's where GA4 kind of comes into its own, because you can obviously see all your data in one place. If you were to do something like that, there's some funnels and interesting audiences, which I actually forgot to mention. You can set up audiences right now in Google Analytics 4 as well, just like you were able to in Universal. And I think a couple of days ago, Google Ads announced that users can start uploading GA4 audiences into Google Ads, which can be quite powerful, especially when you have all your data streams sort of sitting in GA4. So that's something that could be quite interesting to look at.
One more, Preet, just because I think it's a really important question. Will enabling a GA4 automatically sunset our regular implementation, or will we get to run them concurrently and switch them off ourselves down the road?
Yes, I think that's you can run them in parallel right now, and I think that's how Google will probably probably run for another, if I had to guess, probably another 18 months to 2 years. And then potentially they'll start letting everyone know that the UA properties are going to be no longer available. So as an FYI, if you right now go and create a new property under your GA account, the default is GA4. You can still create UA properties, but you have to do a little toggle to be yes. But the default property creation takes you to GA4 properties right now. I've got another one. Would GA4 filter bot and other fraudulent traffic better than Universal Analytics? I'm not sure about this at the moment. There hasn't been much talk about how the filters, etc., in GA4 will work potentially, but I'm not too sure about this one yet. Right, great. Well, hopefully that was useful for everyone. Obviously, if you have any other questions for all the existing clients, speak to your account managers or myself, email me. I'll be more than happy to share. And everyone else, please email or contact us, and we'll be more than happy to help you out.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Preet. Great session. Thanks, mate.
Thank you.